had just come home early from a weekend getaway, hoping to surprise my husband with the new necklace I bought him for our anniversary. He loved little surprises, and I loved planning them. But when I walked into the house that afternoon, it wasn't my husband I saw first. It was David, my stepson. David had been living with us since he turned 21. He had gone to college out of state, but recently moved back after a rough breakup. I hadn't expected to see him in the kitchen shirtless, headphones on, dancing while stirring something on the stove. His muscles flexed with every movement, and I instantly looked away, cheeks warming with guilt. He looked so different than the boy who used to spend summers with us during high school. Taller, confident, and that messy dark hair of his always seemed to fall perfectly around his eyes. I tried to announce myself with a polite cough, but he didn't hear me. So I stepped forward and lightly touched his arm. David jumped, almost dropping the spoon in his hand. When he turned to face me, his cheeks turned as red as mine. "Claire, you scared the hell out of me," he laughed, pulling his headphones down around his neck. "I thought you and Dad weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow. I came early. Thought I'd surprise him. But I guess I'm the one getting surprised today." I nodded toward the pot on the stove. "You're cooking." He grinned, that boyish grin he always used to flash when he got caught doing something innocent. "Yeah, I figured I'd make dinner. Been working on a few recipes lately. Helps me focus, you know." I nodded, watching him stir again. He looked calmer than he had a few weeks ago when he first moved back in. His eyes no longer heavy with sadness. I'd seen the way that breakup with his girlfriend had crushed him, though he tried to act like it didn't. "That's really thoughtful, David. I'm sure your dad will love it." There was a moment of silence between us, and then he said something unexpected. "I'm glad you're here." I blinked. "Oh, yeah," he said, keeping his eyes on the food. "It's been weird lately, having all this time at home. But I think what's made it easier is you." His words made something stir in my chest. I didn't know what to say, so I smiled politely and backed away. "I'll let you finish cooking. I should go put my bag upstairs." As I turned toward the stairs, I felt his eyes on me. Not in a creepy way. Not even inappropriate. Just curious, like he was trying to figure me out. That night dinner was delicious. My husband was pleased, giving David a fatherly slap on the back and complimenting his cooking. But David barely looked at me the whole time. His words from earlier echoed in my head. "I'm glad you're here." The days passed, and little things started happening. Subtle moments, like when we were alone in the kitchen and his hand brushed mine too long while passing the salt. Or when we sat on the couch watching movies, and he chose to sit a little closer than usual. Or how he always seemed to compliment my smile, my laugh, the way I tied my hair. I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Noticed, desired, and it scared me. Because I loved my husband, but our relationship had grown distant lately. He worked long hours, fell asleep on the couch, forgot anniversaries. I never blamed him, but a part of me missed being looked at the way David looked at me. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the guest room when David walked in unannounced. He had a habit of not knocking. I turned to scold him but lost my words when I saw the way he was looking at me. His gaze flicked to the pile of folded towels, then to me. "Need help?" he asked, stepping closer. "I'm fine," I said too quickly. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell the cedarwood cologne he always wore. "Claire," he said, his voice softer now, "I've been thinking about you a lot." My heart jumped. "David, you shouldn't say things like that." "But it's true," he replied, his voice low. "You're smart, kind, and beautiful. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you." I backed away slowly, my hands trembling. "You're my stepson." "Not by blood," he replied. "You and my dad married when I was already grown. And I know it's complicated, but I'm not a kid. I know how I feel." I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. "This isn't right." He stepped back then, the hurt in his eyes unmistakable. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I had to say it. After he left the room, I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart pounding like a drum. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that he said it or the fact that some part of me had wanted to hear it. I avoided him for days. It was easy since my husband had a work trip, and I spent most of my time in our room or out at the garden. But David didn't press. He didn't speak to me much. He gave me space. Then one night everything changed. I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, and the loneliness too loud. I went downstairs to make some tea, and there he was, sitting in the dark kitchen with just the glow of the fridge illuminating his face. He looked up when he saw me, startled, but didn't say a word. I couldn't sleep, I said, avoiding his eyes. Me neither, he replied. I've been thinking about what I said, and I know it was selfish. I just didn't know how to deal with what I was feeling. I sat at the table across from him, watching his fingers trace circles on the counter. I miss feeling close to someone, he said quietly. You're the first person who's made me feel like I'm not broken. I swallowed hard. You're not broken, David. You're human. And you've been through a lot. He looked up at me then, his eyes raw. Do you ever feel lonely in this house? I hesitated, then nodded. Sometimes. He stood slowly and walked around the table. When he reached me, he knelt beside my chair. I don't want to hurt anyone, he whispered. Especially you. But if there's even a small part of you that feels something, anything, I need to know. His words undid me. I didn't answer right away. I simply looked at him, really looked at him, and let myself feel the storm of emotions I'd buried for weeks. The longing, the guilt, Then, with a trembling breath, I whispered, there is a part of me. David didn't move closer. He waited, as if knowing the moment had to be mine to choose. And so I did. I leaned forward and rested my forehead against his. For a while we just stayed like that. No words, no touches, just breath and silence and the fragile truth between us. What happened in the weeks that followed wasn't reckless or hurried. It was slow, careful, emotional. We never crossed any lines that couldn't be uncrossed, but we shared more than we should have. Glances, words, confessions, a connection that felt undeniable. But I also knew it couldn't last. Not like that. When my husband returned from his trip, something shifted. He seemed happier, more present. He started taking me out on weekends again, buying flowers, leaving notes on my pillow. Maybe he sensed that he had started to lose me. Or maybe he just remembered what we used to be. I had a choice to make, and I chose my marriage. One evening I sat down with David in the living room. We can't do this, I told him gently. You deserve someone who can love you without complications, without guilt. He nodded, his eyes misty. I just wish things were different. I know, I whispered, squeezing his hand. So do I.